God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home. Welcome to the Voice of Reason with yours truly, Robert McNeily. This show will be all about you, the American people, politics, punchlines, and a dash of that Western charm and that divine providence that has blessed us for nearly 250 years. It will be a mix of politics, of culture, music, and sports, really everything that not only President Trump loves, but what you love, the American people, bringing you subject matter experts on a whole host of a variety of topics. And on tonight's show, this inaugural pilot on Thursday, June 12th, we have a presidential series later in the show with a declared presidential candidate and also someone who is an expert on the current conflict with Iran. Now, just yesterday, President Trump was at the Kennedy Center and reporters asked him about the importance of what might take place with a potential strike from Israel, a preemptive strike against the Islamic Republic of Iran. And we know that the good people under this Iranian regime who are really under the fold of the mullahs, the ayatollahs, and those theocratic monsters who want to oppress good, liberty-loving people. But we know with the recent trip from President Trump to the Gulf states and in and around the Middle East that Iran, in the longest time, is truly up against the ropes. And as he said earlier today in a press conference, I want the Iranian people to succeed. We can do that through trade. We can do that through dialogue. And that is why President Trump continues to prove why he is the peace through strength candidate. That's why we want to dive into these things, these important topics facing you, the American people, every Thursday night, because it's worth looking into. It's worth knowing how you can prepare. It's worth knowing about taking control of your future for your family, for yourselves. And that's why we have an incredible interview with Alireza Jafarzadeh. He is a gentleman who is taking on the Iranian regime head on, doing it from the federal city of Washington, D.C., in a peaceful and patriotic manner, also in a bipartisan manner, working for you, the American people. Mr. Director, let's toss it there to Jafarzadeh's wonderful interview from earlier this week. We are with Alireza Jafarzadeh. He is the Deputy Director of the National Council of Resistance of Iran, and he had a big press conference this Tuesday morning. Sir, welcome back to Right Side Broadcasting Network. How important is it for Republicans and Democrats alike to realize the threat from Iran?
Thank you so much, Bob. Always a pleasure to be on your show. It's extremely important to know about both the threat coming from the Iranian regime, but also looking at the solution. The issue is not a partisan issue. When we talk about the nuclear weapons, think about the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism and a major violator of human rights and the main source of killings and violence in the region, the epicenter of war and terror, trying to get its hand on a nuclear bomb. And that's why during our press conference earlier on Tuesday, we highlighted the fact that not only the nuclear weapons program of the Iran regime was never abandoned, to the contrary, we introduced a new plan that we discovered that the Iran regime has been pursuing under the order of the Supreme Leader Khamenei, called the Kavir plan. Kavir means desert, which is focused on a central province of Iran known as Semnan, where a good portion of that province is actually desert area, and they're using that area to develop a number of sites that are used to develop nuclear weapons, but also to launch and working on the nuclear warheads. And the old plan known as Ahmad plan that was we exposed actually in 2003 and it was shelved in 2004 has now been elevated to a more expansive, more sophisticated, and more protected plan known as the Kavir plan, meant to build a nuclear weapon for the Ayatollahs.
Now, how close is the regime to actually having that bomb? Are they in possession of it right now, or is it solely still in the testing phases?
Well, certainly they have been working on it, for the past 2-3 decades. It's not an easy thing to build a nuclear bomb, but they have made major advancements over the past 3 decades. Unfortunately, the world has allowed them to do it. The policy of appeasement has actually helped the regime to legitimize their program, playing games with the outside world, dragging the issue and getting it to the point that they're very close to actually, because there are 3 components to a bomb. You need the fissile material, but you need to turn it into weapons, weaponizing it, and then have the delivery system. In all 3 phases, they have made major advancements. And that's why it's so important to keep the focus on the ball, which is, dismantling the entire nuclear weapons program of the regime, calling for the closure of all of these nuclear sites, and don't allow any level of enrichment, any level of research and development, because all of them are part and parcel of a nuclear weapons program. It has never been, and it is not now, a program about energy. It's always been about building the nuclear bomb.
And Iran, the leadership there does not accept mutually assured destruction like other nations would do. Even we disagree with, say, the Chinese Communist Party, but it at least seems like they would recognize that if a weapon of that sort went off in this day and age, it could mean chaos and truly the end of the world. So how do you think President Trump's recent actions over the course of the last few months, especially visiting the Gulf states, would help deter the Iranian regime from obtaining that weapon?
The stated policy of the United States, as enunciated by President Trump and also the Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and the Secretary of State Michael Rubio, has been that the Iran regime cannot develop nuclear weapons. They cannot have an uranium enrichment program, because that's the core of the program, and they cannot do any kind of research and development that would lead to the formation for the building of a nuclear bomb. That policy has to remain in effect. That should be the goal and the guiding principle in any kind of negotiations, as they are now. I think it's the 6th round of talks, even though it's not making any progress. But clearly, the goal of the regime is not to abandon their nuclear weapons program. They want to maintain their program. And the goal of the United States is to shut down that program. So, and there's nothing in between that you settle it somewhere. You cannot have the Ayatollahs to have like half a bomb. So that's why it's so important for the United States to be firm, to be decisive, hold the regime accountable. But the big ally that the United States has is the people of Iran. The people of Iran don't want a nuclear Iran. They don't want the money and resources of the country being spent on something that only serves the purpose of the repressive rulers and drains the resources and money of the country. The nuclear weapons program of the regime has cost at least $2 trillion so far. That's a lot of money for a country like Iran. In order to put things into context, just imagine the oil revenue. You know, Iran is a very oil-rich country. The oil revenue of Iran since the mullahs came to power over the past 46 years have been only, according to all the statistics, about $1.5 trillion. Yet the regime spent $2 trillion on a nuclear weapons program that means nothing for the people of Iran. That's why the people of Iran are the ally of the United States. That's why we expose all the major nuclear sites of Iran. That's why the people are protesting against the regime in all 31 provinces, wanting an end to the rule of the Ayatollahs. So the biggest ally the outside world has is the organized resistance in Iran, the people of Iran, those who want to bring about change and establish a free, democratic, non-nuclear republic government that would not only serve the purpose of the people of Iran, but also live in coexistence with its neighbors.
And with your expertise on the region, do you think these residents of Iran would ever turn their backs on the Ayatollahs and ultimately, like you said, move to a democratic state or even the pre-revolutionary government that existed under the Shah?
You know, certainly the people of Iran have had a lot of experience over, about 100 years. There has been, a lot of effort to bring about change in the country. They rejected the dictatorship of the Shah because, he was a dictator. He had the secret police Sabak. He formed a single party rule, dissolved all the political parties, saying you only follow me. And that didn't play well with the people of Iran. And even more so is the situation right now with the mullahs, because the mullahs are repressing with their repressive ideology of Islamic fundamentalism, which counters the views and the sentiments and the religion of a majority of the people of Iran, who are Muslims, but not Islamic extremists. And they want democracy, they want separation of religion and state. And most importantly, they have been involved in several rounds of major uprisings in Iran that engulf all the 31 provinces of the country. The regime came back and, tried to suppress them, but every time, every year or two, there was another round of uprising. As we speak, the economy is so bad and the regime is so vulnerable that they have had to execute about 1,300 prisoners, among them political prisoners and women, since Pezeshkian, the new president of the regime, took office just this past August. This is a very vulnerable regime that stays in power by killing. But on the other side, you can see a vibrant society, an organized force, the younger generation of Iran who are rejecting the mullahs, and an organized force that has a clear platform for the future of Iran, as we displayed it in our press conference this week. So the prospect for change is very bright. I think it's so important for the U.S. administration and also European nations to realize that their best counterpart are actually the people of Iran, not the ruthless rulers of the country.
Share with me some of the success from the press conference, and also how can American citizens be aware of this situation and also help Iranians to seek that freedom they are so yearning for? And then what are some of the next steps for the Trump administration to appropriately address the Iranian threat coming from the leadership of the Ayatollahs and the mullahs, as you mentioned?
Well, during the press conference, we displayed that the Iran regime really, don't listen to their lies. Here's the facts. Here's the plan. Here are the sites. And it wasn't just this press conference. We have a history of over 2 decades. It was this movement that the NCRI, National Council of Resistance of Iran, that exposed all the major nuclear sites of Iran, including the Natanz uranium enrichment facility, that triggered for the first time the inspections of Iranian nuclear sites by the UN nuclear watchdog, which has continued today. But also we displayed to the public, to the media, the power of the people, the power of this organized resistance. That, the nuclear program is the most secretive part of any country, especially when we're talking about the mullahs ruling Iran. Yet we have had the ability to expose a lot of the details and showing the full picture of the realities on Iran. That by itself, I think, should be enough for the administration, for others to realize that there is an organized force that they can rely on. You know, just this past month, U.S. Congress introduced a resolution with over 227 co-sponsors, both Republicans and Democrats, that talked about a non-nuclear Iran and talked about the solution to the circumstances in Iran, talked about, you know, our movement's leader, Mrs. Mariam Rajavi, and her 10-point platform for the future of Iran. They talked about the right of the people of Iran to end the rule of the clerics in Iran and to be able to confront the Revolutionary Guards. A similar resolution has been introduced in the Senate that has about 16 original co-sponsors, bipartisan, you know, Democrats and Republicans. So, you know, the momentum is shifting toward that direction. I think it's so important for the administration to also be cognizant of these realities on the ground, that the future belongs to the people of Iran, not those who are coming to the negotiating table with the goal of just simply lying to the you know, U.S. negotiators. I think there is a good understanding now. We need to enhance it, and we need to take it to the next level so that they can see the future without being, you know, obligated to act on the ground. For instance, we have asked for no boots on the ground, no money appropriated, no taxpayers' money needed, none of that. Our movement, our leader, Mrs. Rajavi, told a recent hearing in the U.S. Congress that all the U.S. need to do is to recognize the right of the people of Iran to overthrow the repressive rulers, the right of those resistance units, the young people on the ground in Iran to confront the Revolutionary Guards. The rest will come. And no dictator has managed to rule forever. Look at Assad in Syria, how he seemed so invincible only 11 days before he fell, and the whole thing was gone. And Assad is not just a random dictator. He was the biggest ally of Tehran, and he was kept in power as a result of the full support of the Ayatollahs in Tehran. I think the new reality is that the regime is so weak, so vulnerable in the region and inside Iran. That's the new reality that the administration should take into account. Now, how the American public can help, you know, definitely they can get involved with their members of Congress, talk about these realities, urge them to continue their support, but they can spread the information. You know, we're very active on social media. We're on X, YouTube, Instagram. The handle is at NCRIUS. And they can, you know, follow us. They can help us with that, and just spread the word. Information is the most powerful tool that we now have.
Alireza Jafarzadeh, my dear friend, always good to see you, and thank you for doing just that, spreading that important information through the National Council of Resistance of Iran. Thank you for joining us on the right side of history, and we look forward to having you back on the show very soon.
Thank you so much, Bob. You are doing your part in spreading the truth, spreading the information. I think that's the most powerful tool, as I said earlier. Really appreciate the opportunity. Hopefully be back on your show again. Thanks so much.
My thanks to my friend Alireza Jafarzadeh out of Washington, D.C., giving you clarity on such an important topic. This man has devoted his life to U.S.-Iranian relations and what really matters in the Middle East, and to you, the great American people, in turn, what might happen over the course of the next few days. So we hope that brought you some insight, as that is our goal on The Voice of Reason, to be unafraid to dive right in and to celebrate this week as we lead up to 250 years of our Army and our amazing military. And that was already celebrated this week by President Donald Trump as he visited Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Mr. Director, let's cue up that incredible video.
The life of a soldier is not just a job, it's a calling and a sacred tradition passed down from father to son, brother to sister, and one generation to the next. At every hour of danger, our noblest citizens have answered that call. Time and again, our enemies have learned that if you dare to threaten the American people, American soldier will chase you down, crush you, and cast you into oblivion. The last sound you ever hear will be the dueling howl of Black Hawks. Thunderous boom of artillery fire, or the ferocious roar of a U.S. Army infantry brigade. For our adversaries, there's no greater fear than the United States Army. Now it's your duty to shield the flame of freedom that was first lit 250 years ago by the heroes of Concord Bridge and Bunker Hill. Standing before you today, I am more confident than ever that in the days ahead and every generation to come, the U.S. Army will heap glory upon glory. You will protect every inch of U.S. soil, and you will defend America to the ends of the earth.
Be sure to catch all of the coverage on Saturday, June 14th, Flag Day, which happens to be the birthday of the United States Army. We will be in Washington, D.C., the federal city, for all of the action, for the big, beautiful military parade. It also happens to be President Trump's 79th birthday. Happy birthday, Mr. President. I know he wants to downplay it right now, but I would be remiss not to acknowledge the 45th and 47th Commander-in-Chiefs. Beautiful birthday. We look forward to the celebrations this weekend, so be sure to tune in to Right Side Broadcasting Network. So some breaking news during the course of the show. A report recently brought out that failure to pass the One Big Beautiful Bill will kill 1.1 million manufacturing jobs, more than 1.1 million manufacturing jobs in that sector, and nearby 6 million jobs overall will be lost if Congress fails to pass the One Big Beautiful Bill. This negative effect on small business can be swift, it can be ugly, and it really should not happen. Nationwide economic damage could total 5.9 million jobs lost. Also, $540 billion in lost wages. It's a lost GDP of over $1 trillion, a huge effect on our manufacturing base, something that President Trump has proven must be brought back in the form of countless different things. But as Secretary of State Marco Rubio has said, we need to make things here again. We can't simply be a consumer economy as we have been thanks to the neoliberal and neocon agendas of the past 30 or so years. We know that President Trump's living predecessors really let us down. They claimed to be for the American middle class while they shut down Detroit and bankrupted it while bankrolling Beijing at the same time. Here are some key takeaways from the report. More than 96% of businesses in America are organized as pass-throughs. So this simply means that they pay tax at individual income tax rates. Tax reform created a 20% reduction to allow these small businesses to compete on that level playing field, which is all we're asking as a populist movement, to be on that level playing field with their peers organized as corporations. Remember what Mitt Romney said? Well, corporations are people too, sir. Well, remember how much of a failed campaign that was because he could not go after Barack Hussein Obama when it came to policy. He rather agreed with him. Remember, number 44, in fact, said, we designed the healthcare overall overhaul based upon what happened in Massachusetts. So no, thank you, Mitt Romney. I hope you're enjoying retirement. The pass-through deduction will expire completely at the end of 2025. And a recent NAM survey found that 93% of pass-through manufacturers reported that the loss of this deduction will harm their ability to grow, create jobs, and invest in their businesses. So this combination of the reduction in the top rate and the 20% pass-through deduction resulted in significant tax savings for these small businesses, enabling them to invest in new equipment and machinery, facilities, job creation. More than 74% of manufacturers have fewer than 20 employees. So it is crucial, again, to pass this one big, beautiful bill so Congress can preserve tax reform, its competitiveness, and tax rates for small businesses, which, of course, will affect the middle class. Mr. Director and I have been talking about this all week. Am I right, Mr. Director? $30,000 to $80,000. That's what most make in America. They need this much-needed tax relief. Would it not be nice to take home an extra, say, 10 grand on average or in that ballpark? And that's why it's so important to look at this between mandatory spending and the other savings that will come across within this bill, an average of $1.7 trillion. Then on top of all of it, all of the money President Trump bringing in with these big, beautiful deals, especially with the Gulf states on his recent foreign trip to the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and, of course, Qatar. If Congress does not act, accelerated depreciation will be entirely absent from the United States tax code for the first time in decades. This will limit manufacturers' ability to invest in the equipment and machinery they need to get the job done and drive economic growth throughout our entire country, making it more costly for businesses to invest in the United States. More than 90% of businesses in America are family owned. And good on you, because I know the viewers here, we love this country. We love taking calculated risks. That's what America is all about. And that's what the Autopen and Barack Hussein Obama seem to not understand. In fact, it seemed as if they detested it when they were in office, because they never took those major risks. And they got those Ivy League educations. They were from the nicest schools, the nicest opportunities, yet they hated on America. And Scranton Joe allegedly was for the United States when he was all about picking himself up from his bootstraps. Nothing could have been further from the truth. But thank God we're now in this golden era of President Donald Trump, who understands the working man. And you simply look at his family. Look at the Trump kids who went down to the work sites at 12 and 13 with hard hats on. Look at Don Jr., Eric, Ivanka, Tiffany, and now young Barron, who is really impressive. Can't wait to see what he does with his life and that Trump name. It's a family who's been through hell and back to serve this great country. And now we're in that golden era because they decided to come down that golden escalator a decade ago. And with this one big, beautiful bill, more than 90% of businesses in America are family-owned. In the manufacturing industry, family-owned businesses are a critical part of the manufacturing supply chain and pillars of their local communities. Now, the estate tax exemption threshold is scheduled to be reduced by half at the end of 2025. So this subjects more of Americans and small businesses to taxation, threatening the viability of their projects. And Congress should protect family-owned manufacturers by preserving the increased exemption threshold. So the White House is on the right track with all of this, and we don't want to see that happen over the course of the next few weeks. So the United States Senate, Senator Rand Paul, Senator Mitch McConnell, for different reasons, it's almost as if these Kentucky Republicans continue to stab President Trump in the back. We hope that changes come the congressional picnic, but also just a few short weeks from now when there should be a version of the bill coming from the Senate. We know Senate Majority Leader John Thune working overtime for this to get this done. But it's time that the one big, beautiful bill passes. Don't be like Hunter Biden, all passed out after a night of binging, but rather be like the Trumps. Get the work done on time and under budget. And now we have a special presentation here. at the Voice of Reason. Can you believe it? We are now within the midst of the 2026, but also 2028 contest. Yes, there is a presidential candidate geared up and ready to go, declared. He's been at CPAC. He's been making his rounds. And right here on the Voice of Reason, we want to give voice to everyone, including those Republican candidates who are emerging. And this gentleman is Gary Barve. You'll enjoy this interview from last week. We are joined by Republican candidate for President of the United States, Gary Barve. Great to have you on, sir. Now, explain to us why Gary Barve for President of the United States.
Well, first, let me say this, Robert. Thank you for giving me the immense honor and opportunity to be a guest with your awesome RSBN, Right Side Broadcasting Network. I know RSBN is one of the largest patriotic networks in America, and I really appreciate you giving me the honor and opportunity to interview with you as a candidate for President of the United States of America 2028 election, Republican supporter of President Trump. And Robert, let me quickly introduce myself to your great viewers and listeners, and I'll answer your question as well, my friend. My name is Gary Barve. I am a huge supporter of our President Donald J. Trump, a proud Republican of the Republican Party that belongs to our President Donald J. Trump. And I'm officially running for President of the United States of America in the 2028 election to help President Trump make America great again, keep America great, and to help him save America. And I'm running because I love President Trump. I love our country, the greatest country in the world, the United States of America, and I love our great American people. And like I said, I want to help President Trump make America great again, keep America great, and save America. And I'll just say this, Robert, I respect all religions, but I'm Christian. I believe in Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. I believe the Bible is the Word of God. And I genuinely believe that Jesus Christ is with President Trump. Jesus Christ is with our country, the greatest country in the world, the United States of America. And Jesus Christ is with you, our great American people. And I'll say, Jesus Christ is with me, and we're going to save America. And I'll answer your question right now, Robert. Let me talk about an America First agenda issue that I believe is, in my opinion, the most important issue and the strongest issue for my campaign for president as a Republican supporter of President Trump. So look, under dumb as a rock Kamala and crooked Joe Biden's horrific Democrat elected officials, approximately 20 million illegal immigrants crossed across the southern border into our great United States of America illegally, bringing in tremendous crime and drugs such as fentanyl, killing hundreds of thousands of people, great American people. And you know, there are these gangs that came into our country, Robert. You know, you probably heard about this gang, Tren de Aragua, right? They call themselves Tren de Aragua. It's a Venezuelan gang. And, the first time I heard about this gang, Tren de Aragua, I said to myself, what a stupid name for a gang, right? Who names their gang Tren de Aragua? It's a stupid name, but it's a vicious gang. And they literally took over a complete building in Colorado recently. There's another gang that's coming to our country, MS-13. These are bad people, Robert. These are bad people. They literally cut people up just for fun. And, you know, I visited the United States of America southern border recently in Arizona with some great American law enforcement officials. And I heard about some other gang names, Sinaloa Cartel. And, you know, so my direct message to these gang members from the Sinaloa Cartel, from the Tren de Aragua cartel and gang, from the MS-13 gang, my direct message to these gang members right now on Right Side Broadcasting Network, my direct message to these gang members is get the hell out of our great United States of America. If you don't, we will incarcerate members of your gangs, or we will kick members of your gangs out of our country. Robert, my friend, I'm ready to take a bullet for you. I'm ready to take a bullet for our American people, because I want to keep our great American people safe and secure. Law and order, our great police, sheriffs, ICE, military, veterans, firefighters, first responders. Law and order is, in my opinion, the very fabric that keeps our country the greatest country in the world, along with many other reasons, such as American exceptionalism. I believe the American people are the most exceptional people in the world. American patriotism, American entrepreneurial spirit, and I'll say the personality that our great American people have. You know, our great American young people, our great American senior people, they have tremendous personalities, and these are some of the reasons, in my opinion, that, you know, why our country is the greatest country in the world. And I'll say this, America is and always will be the greatest country in the world. And I just am happy to answer any questions that you may have for me, Robert, during this interview. Open book, and I would like to share at some point during the interview two stories during President Donald J. Trump's tremendous win in the 2024 election cycle. He won all 7 battleground states one after the other, and against dumb as a rock Kamala and crooked Joe Biden's horrific Democrat party. And I'm happy to answer any questions, but would at some point like to share those two stories if that's something that you're okay with, my friend. Yes, sir.
Well, let me ask as well, because I can hear the passion in your voice. We've had conversations at CPAC and other public areas on not only your life story, but what you hope to bring to elected office. You're a passionate millennial, and it's a surge of people now running at all levels of office within that millennial generation, which we share. But this is my question. Name ID with the presidency of the United States. Even President Trump has said maybe J.D. Vance will be the heir apparent, perhaps Marco Rubio. How do you plan to get out there to all 50 states and make Gary Barve a household name?
Well, let me say this. First of all, RSBN, Right Side Broadcasting Network, like I said, it's one of the biggest media networks, patriotic media networks in America. I believe you are known for covering every President Donald J. Trump rally since 2015. And I'll say it, you have millions and millions and millions of followers and listeners and viewers on your RSBN, Right Side Broadcasting Network media. And so, look, the media is one way for me to do it, right? Because I believe, I'll say it right now, I believe I'm the best, one of the best, along with President Donald J. Trump, best interviews, candidate interviews in America, I'll say it. And, I hope I don't come across as by saying this, I don't come across as a pompous guy, because I think I'm a very humble guy. Sometimes you have to be a little bit not humble when you politically attack and politically decimate some of the political opponents. But I genuinely believe this. And, I'll share, I'll answer your question in this way. I'll sort of pivot a little bit and do the weave as President Trump does. And, share those two stories that I wanted to share. And if I get to share these two stories with the American people and reach 325 million, 330 million American people, I believe I have a tremendous shot at winning this presidential election as the most loyal supporter of the greatest and the 47th president of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump. So let me share those two stories with you right now, my friend Robert, all right? So look, November 15th, 2022 was when President Trump announced that he's running for president in the 2024 election cycle, right? And, at that time, I believe he announced this from Mar-a-Lago. And look, I have visited Mar-a-Lago a few times. I have met with President Donald J. Trump as well. But, I think he made the announcement about on November 15, 2022 from Mar-a-Lago. And, at that time, Robert, there were no indictments against President Donald J. Trump. He announces, and right after that, there's indictment 1, indictment 2, indictment 3, and indictment 4 against President Donald J. Trump because of the political weaponization of the Department of Justice by the corrupt Kamala Harris, Joe Biden Democrat Party. And I mean, it's so obvious, right? No indictments when he announces. Right after that, there's 4 indictments against President Trump. And, while we're on the topic of these indictments, let me quickly say this. I have a message for Letitia James. She's the New York Attorney General, right? She played a big part in weaponizing the Department of Justice against President Trump. And Letitia James, or Big Tish, I call her Big Tish. She is this horrible, horrible person who was, sitting in the courtroom while President Trump was in the courtroom. And, I think she was enjoying all of the situation because she weaponized the Department of Justice against President Donald J. Trump. And so my direct message right now to Letitia James or Big Tish is when you address the 47th President of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump, remember this, he is Mr. President to you. And, I just wanted to say that. But, coming back to the story that I was sharing with you, 4 indictments against President Trump because of the political weaponization of the Department of Justice by the corrupt Democrat Party. Then there were 2 assassination attempts against President Trump. The first assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania, 1/8 of an inch here and there, it would have been an even worse day than it was. And, then there was the raid of the Mar-a-Lago against President Trump. And throughout this process, I kept saying the same thing to a lot of people. I said, President Donald J. Trump is a big Christian. Jesus Christ is with President Trump. President Trump will win this election and he will save America. And, he won, and he won big against dumb as a rock Kamala and crooked Joe Biden. November 5th, 2024 arrived. And he won big. He won, like I said, all 7 battleground states, one after the other, 312 electoral college votes as well. And I said this recently on another show as well, I've been on probably, Robert, about 25 media networks over the last few months. And, I said this in a recent interview. I said, the Democrat Party does not have the White House. The Democrat Party does not have the House of Representatives. The Democrat Party does not have the US Senate. The Democrat Party does not have leadership. The Democrat Party does not have the America First agenda. The Democrat Party does not have the American people, because the American people are now the America First American people. The Democrat Party does not have President Donald J. Trump. The Democrat Party does not have me, Gary Barve. And the Democrat Party, to be very honest, Robert, has been completely politically decimated by the patriotic President Donald J. Trump Republican Party. And, so he won and he won big, and President Trump won and he won big, and he has saved America and is continuing to make America great again, keep America great, and save America. And, so I love President Trump and I supported him throughout. And that's one of the reasons why I said I'm the biggest, most loyal supporter of President Donald J. Trump in America. And I just want to share a second story with you. All right. So look, July 13th, right? July 13, 2024 was the horrific assassination attempt against President Donald J. Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania. And I was actually at that time a candidate for US Congress in Florida as a Republican supporter of President Trump. I was running for US Congress in Florida's 23rd district. And I was actually at a Vietnamese Make America Great Again event at the time of the horrific assassination attempt against President Trump. And, it was a candidate for sheriff. He's the one who broke the news to me. He said, Gary, President Trump has just been shot. And I was devastated because I love President Trump. But even in that moment of devastation, I said to the candidate for sheriff, I said, but President Trump is okay, right? Nothing can happen to him, because I genuinely believe that Jesus Christ is with President Donald J. Trump. And so I went on stage probably an hour and a half after the horrific assassination attempt against President Trump. I went on stage at the Vietnamese Make America Great Again event. There were probably about 200, 250 MAGA patriots at that event. I went on stage and to show my love, support, and solidarity with President Donald J. Trump, I said the following three things. I said, first, my direct message to the criminals and the gangs and the cartels such as MS-13, to the drug dealers, to the drug smugglers, to the human traffickers is this: your brutal reign of terror in our great United States of America will come to an end on November 5th, 2024, when President Donald J. Trump will win the election, and we will once again shut down the southern border. We will build a wall. We will stop catch and release. We will stop asylum fraud. And we will designate all foreign cartels in our country as foreign terrorist organizations. And we will choke off their supply to the global financial system. And we will once again make America great again. Second, I said, my direct message to the criminals is this: if you fire a bullet at President Donald J. Trump, or if you fire a bullet at me, Gary Barve, fighting for my and our great United States of America, I believe, and I believe President Trump also believes, it is not our responsibility to duck from the bullet. It is the bullet's responsibility to miss us. And third, I said what I said earlier: I respect all religions, but I'm Christian. I believe Jesus Christ is with President Trump. Jesus Christ is with our country, the greatest country in the world, the United States of America. And Jesus Christ is with you, our great American people. And President Donald J. Trump will win the election, and he will save America. And so, look, Robert, I believe in President Trump. I'll say it unequivocally and very confidently. I believe in President Trump in a way that no one in the country, in my opinion, believes in President Trump. I love President Trump because after that speech on July 13, 2024 at the Vietnamese MAGA event, I believe I became a target for the rest of my life because I've taken on these gangs and cartels in a very strong way. And, and the other thing I want to answer is, I want to get to the question you asked me as well. You said, well, what about J.D. Vance if he runs and things like that? The first thing I'll say is this. Look, let me say this about J.D. Vance. And, some people will like it, some people will not. But I want to knock out my political opposition in a very, very strong way. And so I'm going to say this. J.D. Vance, I've called him a doofus. I've called him a docile cheeks beta male, all right? And so, look, I support President Donald J. Trump's decision to select J.D. Vance as his vice president. I have nothing against that decision. I love President Trump. I support President Trump's decision. I have nothing against that. However, Robert, you need a certain type of personality to be president of the United States of America, and you need a certain type of personality to be vice president of the United States of America. President Donald J. Trump has that alpha male I am president of the United States of America ability and aura that JD Vance, in my opinion, does not have at all. And, I'll say this, all right? So I am not really a statistics kind of a guy when it comes to speeches and, campaign interviews and things like that. But I'll say this. I did some research. There are only 6 vice presidents in the history of our country who have gone on to become president of the United States of America by winning their own election. And like I said, there's a reason for that. Presidents are presidents for a reason. Vice presidents are vice presidents for a reason. And so I'll say this. Look, I'll circle it up by saying this. I call JD Vance docile cheeks beta male. I called him a doofus, right? Docile and beta male is very obvious. JD Vance sort of stays in the background, and that's fine. For the sake of the country, Robert, I hope JD Vance becomes a great vice president. But look, I called him docile and beta male because JD Vance sort of stays in the background, and that's okay. But I called him cheeks beta male, and I sort of say this tongue in cheek, but I called him cheeks beta male because I believe JD Vance is conscious about his big cheeks and he covers it up with his beard. And I looked at some videos, JD Vance videos from like a few years back when he did not have the beard, and he looked like he had like 3-4 pomegranates in his mouth, and that's a perpetual situation for him. But look, I'll say this: JD Vance is, in the eyes of some people in America, the apparent frontrunner in the 2028 presidential election cycle, purely because he's on the ticket with President Donald J. Trump, who is the greatest president ever. And so, look, in my opinion, look, I shared a couple of stories with you. I've been right about a lot of things. I'll say this. JD Vance's apparent frontrunner status will start to slide. It'll start to slide, and it'll start to slide very fast. The moment he announces, if he announces, the moment he announces that he's running for president in the 2028 election cycle, and I'll say this, I hope he has some cushions at the bottom of the slide, because I don't want JD Vance to get politically hurt. I don't want JD Vance to get politically hurt. And I know JD Vance is not my biggest fan, and that's okay. Look, Robert, this is a political battle. I want to win this election not for some power grab. I want to win this election because I believe I'm the right man to lead our great United States of America November 7th, 2028 and January 20th, 2029 onwards as the biggest, most loyal supporter of President Donald J. Trump in America, and as a believer in Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior.
Mr. Director, a quick question for you in this process. Do you like JD Vance's cheeks? Because your humble correspondent right here on The Voice of Reason, I actually think he has very nice cheeks, and I like the beard. And what say you to my friends watching at home? Should I stick with the beard? Because you might have noticed that in the interview from last week, I was sporting somewhat of a beard. I tend not to do that, especially in the heat of the summertime, but you can... Please feel free to opine. Feedback at rsbn.tv. Feedback at rsbn.tv. We'd love to hear from you because this is what this show will be about. You, the American people. Perseverance, grit, that dash of classic Western charm with politics, with punchlines, with smiles, all while cutting through the noise and bringing you unbridled access to your government and those who seek to serve you. And maybe a little bit more into who I am, how I got here as a media host, but also my background as a nonprofit professional, as a salesman, a businessman, someone who came from stage and screen, who was inspired from those who came before me to showcase freedom of speech, defending the Constitution, and the greatness that is nearly 250 years of this country. Speaking of perseverance, I come from a background that's quite interesting, including surviving cancer. We will be unafraid to dive into those inspirational stories and those tough topics that you might want to hear about. And our thank you, as always, to Joe Seals and the Seals family, who a decade ago, like President Trump coming down that golden escalator with his beautiful wife, our First Lady, Melania Trump, had a vision for this nation to interview the people attending those very early rallies. That's what we'll showcase here on The Voice of Reason. as we like to end the show, our inaugural show, with the winners and losers of the week. The loser of the week is, without question, Governor Gavin Newsom of California. He is the George Wallace of 2025, and we shouldn't be surprised with the legacy of the demon rat segregationist policies, quite frankly, the racist policies of the demon rat party. As George Wallace attempted to segregate Alabama and take his flawed ideology all the way to the White House, so is this maniac who has destroyed the Golden State. Even his predecessor, Jerry Brown, with all the regulation happening in California at the time, left this child man with so much money, such a surplus, he could have done whatever he needed to do to bring prosperity to the Golden State of California. But no, he wanted men and women's sports. He wanted to continue DEI promises. And then, of course, he licks his finger and goes up to the political wind, seeing what direction it will go. Well, no, we say to the loser of the week, Governor Gavin Newsom, who's always welcome on the show, quite frankly. I was proud to put together his Truth Social account during my times at Truth Social when I was working there. It's at RealGovNewsom40. Scroll on through there, see what you think, because he was so ready, willing, and able to help President Trump when President Trump was inaugurated, who took the time to go out and face the communist Karen Bass, who was refusing to allow people back on their private property. How insane is that? The federal government had to step in and make sure people got back on to where their properties were once standing after those horrible wildfires. The communists cannot succeed. Just take a look at what's happened in California. Governor Gavin Newsom, you are the loser of the week. Now, I have two winners for this week. First and foremost, my beautiful mother. It's her birthday tomorrow. Without you, I would not be where I'm at today. So happy birthday, Mom. It's truly an honor to be your son. And do not forget this upcoming Sunday, Father's Day. Make sure you can hug your dad if he's still with you and celebrate him and all that he's provided for you and your family. My stepfather is truly a prince of a man. He is an excellent lawyer, fisherman, and all-around great guy. I have yet to meet a person or meet an individual who does not like to be in his company. And I look forward to celebrating with them in the very near future. Thank you for watching The Voice of Reason with Robert McNeily. We'll see you next Thursday in the prime time right here on the right side of history at RSBN.